Y'all, this Eric July stuff isn't hitting the same. It doesn't feel the same as it did before. And what I mean by that is the more I watch Eric in recent times, the more I realize how absolutely boring he is as an individual. And that boring personality of his is boring me. And I'm becoming disinterested in even listening to him talk. And this is just me. I'm thinking here. I'm thinking out loud. I don't know what this video is going to end up being at the end of the day, but walk with me here for a second, okay? I've been really busy for the last couple months. This summer has, thank goodness, been very busy for me. So I was sent some videos by Eric from some friends, and they're like, check these out. If you want to make videos about them, you can. And as I was watching them, I'm like, you know what? He just says the same stuff about his business over and over again. Any clips with him and Az is basically just Az talking, and Eric's just kind of sitting there being the co-pilot, even if the stream is on his channel, even if the clip is on his channel. Like, he might chime in towards the end or whatever. It's mostly Az just kind of ranting. And I've come to realize, like, there's a disinterest in that because I don't really like Az. So when I'm watching those videos, I'm waiting to hear what Eric is going to say. And then it's like he just says the same stuff. It's like rinse and repeat for them. Find comic book, talk shit about comic book. Find person that made comic book, talk shit about that person. Talk shit about Star Wars, talk shit about Marvel, talk shit about this, that, and the other. He's lost over 10,000 subscribers on his channel in what I think has been like the last year and some change. And I think the last thing you want as a content creator, somebody who is using your platform to sell a product, which at the end of the day, that's what the Rippaverse is, at least in its current inception. And I know Eric's trying to change that. I don't know if he's going to be successful or not. And look, I'm not trying to get anybody canceled. That's not what I'm doing here. Number one, I don't have the power to cancel anybody. So even if I was attempting to do it, it would not work. I'm a tiny channel. Secondly, I don't care if he sells these books. Like the Rippaverse comics are just, they're not good comic books, in my opinion. So I don't care. If people want to buy them, they want to buy them. I think it's stupid, but it is what it is. But he's selling this. These comic books are essentially just merch for his channel. And I don't know if he has some numbers that we don't have, possibly because he says he's been super transparent about this. He's selling his comic to his viewers on YouTube because that is the market for him. So I'm totally confused about that. And this detachment from all of the normal people he would hang out with and do stuff with, like Geeks and Gamers, Friday Night Tights or whatever, because he isn't really doing that anymore. You might see him on now and again with them. He's been doing interviews with random political outlets and stuff like that. But overall, he's really pulled back. And I'm not talking about like not monetizing his haters. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just his general presence on the internet. And he said this himself. He's pulled back on a lot of that because he's running his warehouse, whatever. But once you peel away the layers of like the other people that he associated with, you realize that Eric July is boring. He's a boring person. And the last thing you want as a creator on this platform, and I'll probably keep saying this, is disinterest or apathy towards your products. Once your critics and your quote unquote detractors start moving away from talking about your content when it comes to a social media presence, you should probably get worried about that. You should probably be worried about that because a lot of the people that would allow you to pit your comic book against some sort of like counterculture thing requires you to have opposition. You have to have ops in order to position yourself that way. That's really the only way it works. And by him arguing through proxy with people on the internet, with his minions, he has detached himself from any kind of opposition in that way. And I think it's affecting his business. Now, I don't know what the long term for that looks like, but if you're looking online, nobody's really talking about Gooding. And I know that seems hyperbolic, but if you go to like the Reddits, you go to some of the other places where people are discussing comic books, you don't see people talking about it. Primarily, the Gooding conversation happens on Twitter, on threads, usually by people who are detracting or in comments under the videos. Eric doesn't seem super engaged with his characters in his comics or his artwork or any of that stuff. He might shout them out, talk about them here and there. Ultimately, I think Eric cares about the business aspect of it, the warehouse, the shipping, the efficiency. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's where I think his interest lies. I think the creation process is an afterthought to that, which is why he has a bunch of other people doing it, because he realizes he's not a great writer. He's obviously not an artist. He's not going to be lettering or coloring or inking or anything like that. Any other supplemental role in all this. And you're seeing it with the streams where the detractors hang out. There's less interest and enthusiasm about talking about Eric. He just, like, the other day he did some, he's been talking about politics, which he does on his channel from time to time. But clearly the views on his videos about politics, his live stream and his videos, if you look back 3 weeks, you'll see that those views are the most viewed content on his channel, the political stuff. And I would say that's probably because a lot of people that say they want apolitical comic books don't really want apolitical comic books. The truth is they want conservative, right-leaning comic books because that's what they're coming to Eric for. And he may say, well, I'm not right-leaning. Fair enough. Maybe you're not. I don't know what's in your heart. I have no idea. But I will say that the fan base you have seems to be conservative and right-leaning. And so to me, that would say that your whole idea about the Rippaverse not picking a side, when he made that video and he talked about that, and I was like, okay, so you're not anti-woke, I guess. So, and then he had a graph. This was so weird. He was like, my employees leave politics at the door, but then he had a graph with everybody that works for him's political leaning. Why would he have a graph with the political leanings of the people that work for him? I thought that was a little weird. But ultimately, at the end of the day, when you have your detractors, when you have your critics, when you have that kind of like community that has been there sort of criticizing and gnawing at you for a while, allowing you free opposition to push your business forward, you remove campaigns, you disengage from those guys, and you walk away from that. It just makes for a very boring existence on the internet. He's not hanging out with the same people he's hanging out with. I truly believe he's hanging out with Az, like strictly because of the fact that Az has a little bit of emotion and polarization to him, and Eric without Az doesn't have that. So this is not me saying I'll never talk about Eric July again. I clearly will. If Eric does something dumb or says something stupid that I feel like I need to correct, I will. But I just don't think he's very interesting. And I think apathy is a really bad place to be as a content creator engaged in the culture war community. Like, if he were just making comic books and it had nothing to do with culture or politics or anything like that, he could probably get away with that. But your fan base wants that. And you might think that's not what you want to do, but that's who you've cultivated. And at the end of the day, if you're not feeding the beast, eventually the beast will turn on you and it'll leave.